Boxing Gossip Podcast, number 80. Happy New Year. Hope everyone's doing well. See a lot of the usual faces in the chat. Evening to Leon, to Sogan, to Nick, to George, to Fat Apples, to Tom, to Oasis, and to Bot. Thanks to everyone for joining. For those who are new, we do a podcast every Wednesday at 8:30. We broadcast live. It's then uploaded to the channel afterwards. We're up to podcast 80, which makes me feel like we've been doing this a very, very long time. Delighted to say we've got the entire panel joining us tonight. We've got Paul and Jet. We've got Jay, who's joining us from his holiday in Spain. We're hoping that his signal will hold up. And we've got Irish Tom as well. So we've got a full panel tonight, lots to discuss. Can see a lot of people joining as we've gone live. So many thanks to everyone who's joined. Please hit the thumbs up button nice and early, which will mean that this gets a bit more visibility and more people join. The plan for tonight's show, as you guys know, there hasn't been too much boxing in recent weeks. There's not much boxing, if any, next week or the week after to be discussing. So what we've planned to do is to look back at 2017. I've written down lots of memorable fights, lots of memorable moments from 2017. We're going to talk through them month by month. And the panel are just going to have a bit of a mull over of some of our memories from the year that's passed. And, you know, let's just hope 2018 can be as good a year for boxing as 2017 has been. So without further ado, we're going to get rocking and rolling. And we're going to start by looking back to the month of January. And January for me was a very, very good month for boxing. The fights that I've written down as particularly memorable: Badou Jack versus James DeGale, the consensus #1 and #2 at the time at super middleweight, squaring off. Gervonta Davis versus Pedraza. Carl Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz, the rematch. Mikey Garcia versus Dazan Zlatikanin. All of those fights took place in January. Got the year off to a bit of a bang. Gents, what stands out to you from that list?
What were they again, Tom? Sorry, say them again.
James DeGale versus Badou Jack. Gervonta Davis versus Pedraza. Carl Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz. And Mikey Garcia versus Dazan Zlatikanin.
That was the second Frampton Santa Cruz.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I can remember the hype after the Gervonta Davis win. I mean, like, you know, there was a lot of people started to really rate Gervonta Davis after that. The Frampton Santa Cruz, I mean, like, I didn't think it was as good a fight as the first one. Maybe that's just because I'm a Frampton fan. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like it was a bit weird seeing the way like Santa Cruz kind of like sort of like did stuff that I've never really seen him do in that fight, and it was kind of like a bit. I think I had money on. I don't bet often, as you guys know, and I think I was pretty sure that that Frampton would beat him, and I think I was just a little bit dismayed to watch that unfold as it did. I'm trying to think of it. DeGale Jack. It was a decent fight. What was the last one you said? You said there was another one.
Mikey Garcia versus Zlatikanin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I was massively impressed with Mikey Garcia in that fight. You know, like, it weren't just a knockout. It was it was everything. He's Mikey Garcia. He's kind of like, he does everything really well. Do you know what I mean? His footwork, his you know, he's got great jab. He just really controlled Zlatikanin from start to finish, and then obviously just, you know, like, he set up that knockout to the point where Zlatikanin didn't really even know where he was, and then just iced him. It was a really great performance. So I think that's probably the main thing that sticks out from that month for me, to be fair. But I won't talk for too long on all of these because there's quite a lot, and there's 5 of us on tonight. So
yeah,
cool.
Lot to get through. Did the people think that was the end of James DeGale as we know him that night?
I think it had a major effect.
Yeah, I do.
Mm.
I think it starts taking its toll a little bit now. I don't know whether that's down to. I heard that Jim McDonnell really I don't know where I've heard this, but really tires his fighters out and really works them. And I think that maybe this is starting to have an effect now, as we saw in the Truax fight. Wars might have sort of caught up to him finally.
Yeah, very, very possibly. It doesn't feel like he's had a. It doesn't really feel like he's had a massively hard fights to date. You know, I know he's had long fights, but the Groves fight, the Dirrell fight, they don't feel like they were the most grueling fights. But maybe, I don't know, Butte, Medina, you know, he's now in his early 30s, isn't he? I don't know, that Badu Jack fight. Look at what Jack did to Nathan Cleverly at the weight division above. And I know people don't rate Cleverly, but Cleverly was a genuine light heavyweight, and he was someone who'd showed huge durability in his career. And you know, maybe Badu Jack is an absolute demon, you know, looking back on it.
I mean, I think Kovalev had played a big part in the way Cleverly was there. I think Cleverly hasn't really looked like the same since that beating he took off of Kovalev. But the thing with De Gale as well is I think some of these fights have taken their toll on him. But I think as well, like with De Gale, a lot of it's mental. I think De Gale is a guy that he's just like, he's confident to the point of like arrogance, and I don't know whether he saw Caleb Truax, saw he was a middleweight, really, like we all did, and just thought this is just to keep busy fight. It's an easy fight, and perhaps didn't take it as seriously as he could have. Maybe didn't train as hard as he could have. I don't know.
There was major hints though, Paul, that he was talking about changing trainers. You can see that he said like something's got to change. So I don't know whether that's a happy camp right there. I think there's something obviously. I think there's something very badly wrong.
Yeah,
badly.
I agree. I'm not sure what it is, but I mean, I think there's more to what. Because look, I think James De Gale at his best beats Caleb Truax fucking quite easily for me. That was not James De Gale at his best that night. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. And for whatever reason, something has taken its toll. Something has affected his performances. And I just hope it's not the end of him, because he's a decent fighter, James De Gale, you know?
Yeah.
But nowadays, though, it's rare for a fighter to keep a trainer for such a long period of time, especially when they start to move into that elite level. They tend to, you know, mix that trainer up again, don't they, and look for that elite trainer. And so maybe it's time for him to have a change.
Yeah, good point.
Very possibly. Very, very possibly. Yeah. For me, 2017, it was either the best fighting the best, or, you know, let's say close to that, you know, some of the best fighting some of the other best. So, you know, De Gale, Jack, I had them as 1 and 2. Carl Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz, I think you could make a strong argument that was number 1 versus number 2. Garcia Zlatikanen was 2, who were certainly top 5. You know, even Gervonta Davis Pedraza, you know, that was very much there. So for me, January got the year off to a bang, and, you know, looking back on it, is exactly the kind of boxing that we enjoy. Let's put it that way. Looking ahead to February, the action kind of continued. Maybe not to quite the same standard, but I've written down quite a lot of moments from February. I was lucky enough to be at the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Reynold Quinlan fight, which also featured David Price versus Christian Hammer on the undercard. That fight will probably live longer in the memory than Eubank's domination of Quinlan. We had Adrian Granados taking on Adrian Broner. We had Deontay Wilder coming through some tough moments to stop Gerald Washington. We had a fight of the year contender on the undercard between Izu Ugonu and Dominic Breazeale. We had a fight of the year contender at York Hall between Boy Jones Jr. and Craig Poxton. We had Ray Vargas coming over and defeating Gavin McDonnell. You know, so from the sublime in you know, De Gale and Jack, to talking about York Hall and Gavin McDonnell. So there's levels to this game, but nevertheless, you know, look back at February, and that was an action-packed month with lots to discuss as well, gents.
Yeah, I was just. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, Tom.
Yeah, I was just waiting how long it would take before we'd have David Price in our roundup.
Didn't take too long, did it?
No.
You won't be forgetting that.
I was at the
soon. Yeah.
Yeah. I was at the George, not the Boy George, Boy Jones, the Boy George Jr. That'd be good. And the Boy Jones Jr. fight. That was the best fight I've ever been to live. Tear up. And I heard that, is it today that I hear that Boy George, I'm going to call him Boy George Jr. Boy George is, he's moving up to lightweight.
Is he really? I didn't know. I saw that Frank's put him out on that copper box card in Feb.
Yeah, he's moving up to lightweight, so that's news just in, hot off the press. Somebody was saying there earlier, like, I don't know, was one of you saying that they didn't think that De Gale had been in a lot of hard fights? Man, that Badu Jack fight, he took a pacing in the last round.
Oh, yeah, it was me. I said, aside from the Badu Jack fight, it doesn't feel like he's had wars in his career, but I guess the Bute and Medina fights were hard as well.
They're just top-level fights, I think. And, James De Gale has slipped. He's gone down a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what about the other fights, Tom? Did any of them particularly stand out or live long in the memory for any reason?
Not else. What else was there? Did you say?
So in February,
the David Price fight was entertaining for all the wrong reasons. It's kind of like, I hate to quote Tony Bellew, but like David Price is the only boxer I've ever really seen folded like a deck chair.
Yeah.
He genuinely hangs. He's like somebody putting out their bed sheets after they've shat the bed from too many Guinness the night before.
What about Deontay Wilder versus Washington? Was that a fight that people will look back at and say, look, here's the blueprint to beating Deontay Wilder? No. Like,
that fight, we had to put up with a lot of rubbish from Dwyer talking about all the reasons why Washington was going to win it. Man, it's hilarious. Like, Dwyer is a man who could put together, like, for Washington, he basically put a list together of all the reasons why he could do it. But if you analyze them all closely, he failed at every single different sport or whatever he did, and he just took up boxing late. The alternate view, but a failed footballer, a failed basketballer, blah blah. But look,
I am Dwyer's biggest fan, mate. Biggest fan. Never miss an episode.
I know. I listen to him too, but God, he just talks rubbish most of the time. He a stop clock is right twice a day. That's Dwyer. They had the thing is with that fight was Deontay Wilder was never like worried. I just think he was waiting for finding the one punch, So I don't think he was, it's like saying Kell Brook got a round or two off Golovkin in the 5 rounds. It's kind of irrelevant. You know what I mean?
No, I hear what you mean. Like, in hindsight, maybe Wilder was just picking his spots. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, just waiting to time him with the big shot, just trying to get the right opening and then just take him
I think
out.
at one point I was scoring that fight, and I do think at one point I looked down at my scorecard and had Gerald Washington 30-27 up. I think I'm right saying that.
Yeah, I did too. He won the first few rounds pretty much. The thing with Washington though is he's useless other than a couple of like points. He's got a decent jab and whatnot. Soon as anybody puts it on him at all, he like just crumbles, man. He's like a fucking biscuit dunked into a cup of tea, like a too hot cup of tea. Just absolutely just disintegrates before your eyes.
What type of biscuit are we talking here, Paul?
Well, I was going to say a hobnob, but I think we'll have to go with like a rich tea because they just like
because like if you had a fig roll normally wouldn't fall apart too well.
No, they're
the fig could keep it.
A bourbon would be difficult as well.
Yeah,
bourbon would be. Yeah, there's a good binding agent between the bourbon.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I was going to go with a party ring. Because
party ring. Or
if I look at Gerald Washington, from the outside, He looks like a very sweet, slick boxer. You know, he's got everything. But then when you actually bite into it, you know, there's very little substance there.
Yeah, do you know what, lads? I go more for a lemon puff, if I'm being honest.
Here we go. Moving swiftly onwards, we go ahead to March, and March featured Irish Tom's favourite fight of the year. No, not Danny Garcia versus Keith Thurman. David Haye versus Tony Bomber Bellew. It did also feature Danny Garcia versus Keith Thurman, another fight which represented the elite taking on the elite. We saw Daniel Jacobs take on Gennady Golovkin. We saw Anthony Crolla take on Jorge Linares. Now, in hindsight, Jorge Linares was the best bet of 2017. 13-8 to defeat Anthony Crolla. 13-8. We also saw Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, pound for pound #1, taken out by Saur Rungvisai. So, you know, huge month for boxing, Marks. To read out again, Haye Bellew, Garcia Thurman, Triple G versus Jacobs, Crolla versus Linares, Gonzalez versus Rungvisai. You know, talking through this list with you guys, looking back at it all, makes me think just what a great a year 2017 was.
Yeah, and I still can't believe how many people scored that fight to Danny Jacobs. I just think people need to have their heads examined. You scored it to Danny Jacobs, Gossip, did you?
I think it's a bit hazy. I think I either had it, maybe I can't remember if I had it a draw or scored it to Jacobs, and then I rewatched it and said I scored it to Golovkin.
Yeah, like the amount of people that are calling themselves hardcores and all these boxing podcasts, you know, and they score that one. To me, that's a very easy fight to score. I think it's exactly what the judges scored it. Was it 7 rounds to 4 essentially with the knockdown, 7 rounds to 5 with a knockdown, and all 3 judges had the same score. And every time I watched that fight, I got the same score. It just seems like an obvious one to me. People on these some podcasts, they really love to hate certain fighters. You know, I hate certain fighters, but I'll judge them fair. That's the way I try it. You know.
I think I had it 7 rounds to 5 watching it back, but I haven't watched that fight for 6 months, so it's not clear in my memory. I do have it as a very, very close fight now. You know, I hear what you're saying, that it was close but clear. But
I think Jacobs was given credit for doing better than people thought he was going to do.
Totally.
What basically happened there, I think everybody just thought, because like I don't think a lot of people sort of like really rated Jacobs really highly, not like as an elite and whatnot, and a lot of people thought he was just going to get smashed up quickly, and he did way better than he thought. But I agree with Irish. I think it's quite an easy fight to score, and I had Triple G winning it quite clearly, although it was close-ish. It was quite a clear fight. But this is the thing, what you were just saying about people sort of like hating certain fighters, like this bugs me. This really fucking pisses me off. Like, you get some like channels, you know, podcasts and whatnot, that, you know, they'll put like a set of fucking rules for one fighter. This is what he has to do to earn my respect. And then like another fighter, they'll go, oh well, he's top of the pound for pound list because he did like one thing or whatever. I mean, like, some fighters.
But Paul, you just got to leave the McGregor thing go. Leave it go.
I'm on about Lomachenko. I won't say the name of the channel, but I heard somebody say, when Lomachenko does what Pacquiao did and moves up as many divisions as Pacquiao did, then he'll give him credit. And it's like, fuck me, that's like never happened. That's a one-off. Pacquiao is a fucking one-off. And then in the same breath he said, oh well, because Terence Crawford beat Ndongo, he's pound for pound #1. I mean, I know this is getting off topic a little bit, but I don't think Terence Crawford's done anywhere near enough to be pound for pound #1, resume-wise, if you're going to look at resume. But the point I was trying to make is I don't like the way certain people seem to hold one fighter to one set of standards and then another to a completely lesser set.
There we go. I mean, I'll be honest. When the Daniel Jacobs fight came around, I was one of those who was pretty guilty of writing Jacobs off. You know, and maybe what you both said is accurate to me, because I completely wrote Jacobs off. I said, this is a guy who got sparked out by Pirog. This is a guy who in his last fight or second last fight got put on the floor by Sergio Mora, who couldn't crack an egg. How on earth is he going to go in there with Gennady Golovkin, this ferocious puncher, and do anything? You know, he's going to get mullered. That was my take on the fight. And then I watched the fight. You see Jacobs doing really well. You see Jacobs picking up rounds. You see Jacobs causing Golovkin a lot of problems. And, you know, maybe I, you know, first viewing, I scored it to Jacobs. Second viewing, I agree with you guys. I scored it to Golovkin. But, yeah, maybe I was one of them who gave Daniel Jacobs a little bit too much credit on the basis that I thought he was going to get absolutely wiped out. And he ended up doing, you know, a pretty heroic loss. Let's put it that way.
I think Billy Joe put it right. He said he lost very pretty, but he'd rather have an ugly win. And that's probably the right thing to say in this sort of situation, that Jacobs, you know, performed with a lot of credit, but I think he gets a lot more credit for a loss rather than actually beating beating Golovkin.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On a related note, seeing as we're talking about boxing in Mars, Garcia versus Furman is a fight I was massively excited for at the time. And I actually look back on it a bit disappointed because of the activities of both guys subsequently. You know, it's an absolutely monstrous fight. Provided a huge platform for both guys. Furman announced himself as the #1 at welterweight at the time. He's been inactive, hasn't fought since. Garcia has been inactive, hasn't fought since. I appreciate he's now got a rematch, a comeback fight against Brandon Rios, but you know, disappointing that off the back of a big fight like that, neither of them have been able to have any career momentum and springboard themselves onto bigger and better things. But yeah, that's another highly close competitive fight. The right man won for me, and that will, you know, be another good example of boxing in 2017.
I've something to say. Did you see the WBC are making? Is it Danny Garcia? One of them. Are they making him the second in line for Thurman's belt after Porter? What's wrong with these fucking organizations? Because that wasn't even close, and he hasn't even had a fight.
I believe that the Rios fight will serve as an eliminator for the WBC title.
Yeah,
but Rios hasn't even.
Rios is like
fought recently.
I think he did. He did. He fought a few months ago against.
Oh yeah, he did.
Somebody journeyman that doesn't. His basically.
I'll tell you
Brandon
something else.
Rios is shot.
The WBC have said in a statement today. The WBC have said that the light heavyweight belt will be contested between Adonis Stevenson and Badu Jack. Now that's a good fight. I'm going to cover this in a separate video tomorrow. It's a good fight. It's a fight I like.
What
but
Eleider Alvarez, though?
Your heart has to go out for Eleider Alvarez. So listen to what they've done here. Eleider Alvarez is going to fight a final eliminator, despite the fact he's been mandatory for ages. And it's going to be final eliminator versus Alexander Gavodzic. Eleider Alvarez has been horribly shafted there, hasn't he?
Jesus.
I don't feel too sorry for Eleider Alvarez because he's had hundreds of thousands of dollars step aside money 2 or 3 times.
Are you sure about that?
So he's done well out of his mandatory position.
They paid him step aside money. Stevenson's camp paid him step aside money about 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Well, so it's probably the easiest money he ever made in his life. Just sit there for fucking 2 years and just cash the checks.
Fair play. I think he might be quite friendly with Stevenson. I don't know if they're part of the same training setup.
I think they're part of the same promotional group or something like that.
Okay. But you wouldn't pick him to beat Gavodzic?
No.
But I don't really care, to be honest. Like, if he's made all his money, he's not that good anyway. So, like, to be honest with you, I'd much prefer to see the Badu Jack fight versus the Eleider Alvarez fight.
Yeah, sure.
Same. I'd rather see that as well. And I think
the last time he had a mandatory was Bellew.
I know, it's ridiculous. This is like the WBC again. The WBC are just dog shit. They don't know what they want to do. Like, with one fighter, they'll like fucking force them into the mandatory really quickly and whatnot, or strip them or whatever. And then with other fights, they just seem to let it go on forever. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. And then with the clean boxing program, they try and make out they're all like, you know, leading the way and everything. And yet, you know, one of the guys that I can't remember who it was now. One of you might know in one of the lower divisions, like they said he'd passed the sort of like first batch of tests, and he hadn't. He'd failed.
I think it was Lewis Neri.
No,
Lewis Neri, yeah.
No, I'm not talking about Lewis Neri. I'm talking about somebody in the chat might know. Who was it that was on the initial sort of like test run of testing with the clean boxing program, and then failed right afterwards? Ah, fucking hell! Come back to me on it. Carry on, guys.
I was going to say the WBC today. Actually, I saw it on Twitter that they mandated Jorge Linares versus Mikey Garcia after Garcia's next fight against Lipinets. So yeah, that might be a good. That'll be a really good fight as well. Fantastic.
But it's Garcia Lipinets for a strap at 140.
Yeah, IBF, mate. It's
interesting. I wonder if he'll hold straps in different divisions then.
It's possible. I think they gave him a special exemption or something. That's what they said. They gave him the WBC gave him a special exemption to fight at the 140 weight class. So yeah, we'll have to see if he gets through Lipinets first. That's that might be a tougher fight than people expect.
Let's could be a good fight. Let's move on to April. April was another month with a huge amount of boxing. Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko, a fight that will live long in the memory for most. Storm Porter versus Andre Berto. Tommy Langford versus Kurt Zidez. Martin Murray versus Gabe Rosado. Controversy. More controversy as Terry Flanagan took on Petr Petrov. We had the debut of Daniel Dubois against the devastating Marcus Kelly from Cornwall. We had Vasil Lomachenko versus Jason Sosa. We had the first clash of the Liams as Liam Smith took on Liam Williams. And we had Marco Huck versus Maris Bradis. The more I talk about it, 2017 is got to be one of the best years in modern boxing history, I'll tell you. But, I guess out of that mixture, a lot of fights there, but I guess out of that mixture, Joshua Vlad is the one that we'll be talking about in 5 years' time, perhaps.
Well, for me, the best one of the whole lot was probably Scott Quigg versus Virial Simeon. That was that was the one that really got me going.
That was.
I don't know if anyone saw it on Twitter. Eddie Hearn has said that they're trying to make a deal with Oscar Valdez to face Scott Quigg. Yeah,
it looks very likely. Those guys know each other. I think they trained together at the Wildcard gym. It's got to be, in my opinion, that's a terrible matchup for Quigg.
By the way, sorry to interrupt, guys. That was Fernando Vargas I was talking about. Is after the? I think it was after the Salido fight.
Francisco. Is it Francisco?
Francisco Vargas. No. Oh, I don't fucking know. One of them.
But yeah, so huge amounts in April. AJ versus Vlad selling out Wembley Stadium will kind of be, I guess, the definitive British boxing image of 2017.
I think for some people, after that Vlad and Joshua fight, the year finished for boxing. For a lot of casual people out there, I think that was it.
You just that was the peak of boxing.
That was it. It's over. Year's over. Till Joshua fights again.
Till Joshua fights again, which he did, but we'll come to that in due course.
We won't talk about that.
In May. Yeah, we won't. Absolutely. In May, Joseph Parker, for the first time, defended his WBO heavyweight title against the unheralded Razvan Kajanu. Liam Walsh took on Gervonta Davis. Kell Brook defended his world title against Errol Spence. George Groves finally won a world title against Fedor Chudinov. David Allen was upset by Lenroy Thomas. And perhaps most memorably, maybe even more memorably than Brooks Spence, Saul Canelo Alvarez took on Cesar Chavez Jr. in a fight that Irish Tom said could be a competitive matchup. Brook versus Spence, Canelo versus Chavez, Groves versus Chudinov, May, another strong month in the sport of boxing, guys.
What's this character assassination going on here?
Well, I just thought I'd get it in early because we've got the McGregor fight coming up in a month.
Even that a bit.
Viva McGregor.
Brooke Spence. I mean, I think you know, the Triple G fight kind of like just ruined Kell Brook. I don't think he's ever going to be the same again, Kell Brook. If you look at when he started to take punishment in that Spence fight, I know it wasn't on the same side and whatnot, but it was. If you think about it, that structure it's all part of the same fucking structure, isn't it? Above the eye and that. I think he was just so worried about, you know, that happening again, that he kind of like went to pieces a little bit. Do you know what I mean? I think, you know, this is why I don't like certain fights being made, like, you know, Canelo, Khan, Brook, Triple G and stuff like that, because it really, like, a fight like that really can sort of like physically and emotionally damage a fighter so much that they're never the same again. And I think that might be what we'll see with Kell Brook. My gut feeling is that Kell Brook won't ever be like he was in, say, the Porter fight again. I don't think we'll ever see that Kell Brook again. It's
the money and the glory, though, isn't it? Really, you know. Yeah, I mean, Kell Brook's will have to have been tempted to step up, fight Golovkin, big money, and just, you know, he's thinking, if I beat this guy, you know, I'm going to be like the #1 name in boxing.
Yeah,
off that win. So he's got to believe in himself a little bit, and it's the same with Canelo. Khan might be a little bit different because that was definitely about money. I don't think there was much glory in that, but I think it was definitely about money. But I think with the reputation that Triple G had, Kell Brook would have, you know, been chomping at the bit to, you know, possibly get the opportunity to have a victory over him and stamp his name.
And I think, like we all said it, you know, before that fight as well. Like, he was probably thinking the same thing, that like he was kind of in a bit of a win-win situation there. It's kind of like, if he beat Triple G, then obviously he's a fucking superstar overnight. If he loses to Triple G, well, everybody expected him to lose anyway. The Khan fight would have still been there. I think the Khan fight is still there if Khan grows a set. And so, like, I think that was probably part of it. But I just think somebody, maybe his dad or something, should have been, I don't know, stepping in and saying, like, this is a bad fucking move. I mean, like, if you look at it, like, Triple G up until that point, nobody had gone the distance with Triple G in about 5.5 years. I think he had, what was the knockout streak? It was about fucking 15, 20 fights or something, since he hadn't knocked somebody out in the middleweight division. If you look at it on, you know, that's not a fucking good move, is it? You know, even regardless of big money or glory or whatever, it's not fucking sensible thing to do, is it? Really, as shown what happened to him.
But fighters are fighters, aren't they? They want to fight, and to me, it shows that he's got some serious balls to get up and go up against that guy. As I said, he's not going to, you know, he's in a no-lose situation in a way. Unfortunately, it's affected him physically, and that's the issue more than anything. But every fighter will want to. You know, you've got to give him kudos for wanting to go out there and fight someone that's so devastating up until that point, and so many people avoided.
Let me ask you guys a question. Let's say Brook had smashed up Jojo Dan in a rematch instead of fighting Golovkin, and then Brook, after beating up Jojo Dan #2, went in against Errol Spence to defend his mandatory title. And let's say Brook Spence was still made, but Brook hadn't gone through that Golovkin fight. Based on the fight that we saw with Brook and Spence, who would you guys be picking in that fictional scenario?
Sorry, say that again. Between who, Tom?
Let's say Brook hadn't fought Golovkin. Let's say he'd taken a routine fight at welterweight. And that Golovkin fight never happened. And then Kell Brook versus Errol Spence was mandated, and that fight did happen. You know, who would you have picked in that fight with the benefit of hindsight? A Brook who hadn't lost to Golovkin versus Errol Spence?
It's a hard one. I'd probably pick Brook, to be completely honest. I think if you look at the start, the early rounds in that fight, for me, Brook was a level above. He looked a level above. I think it would have been a close fight, but I think Brook probably would have won that.
Those body shots, lads, that's really got him. Half.
Yeah, it's the weight cut, man. It's definitely the weight cut. I think Brook would have been a lot better if he was regularly making welterweight, but I think even then he's still struggling. So it's still tough. I'd edge Brook, but
it definitely closens up in it. But
yeah, I agree with that.
You know, it's a closer fight. But the other thing is, you know, if it goes to the scorecards in England, would Spence win it if he should? If he actually deserves a 7-5 fight, would he get it in England?
Yeah. Tom, I know you watched my video the other day because you left me an abusive comment on it. Rewatching Kell Brook versus Errol Spence. In that video, I'll summarize it for those who haven't seen it. I say that having rewatched that fight, I think Kell Brook is worth one more chance, and I think he was actually looking very, very good in that fight prior to the injury. Do you disagree with that? Do you think that Kell Brook is completely finished now, despite the fact he was probably ahead in that fight at halfway?
Yeah, but you know, like half a fight is none of a fight. You know, a lot of fighters fight 12-round game plans. Certainly a fighter like is a 12-round fighter, as in he puts the body work in. And if you're a top fighter, it's the end of the fight to find out where you are. It's no good winning the first 2 rounds in a fight. Look, you know, Washington won the first few rounds against Deontay Wilder, but who would give him more than 3% chance against AJ? You know, and Wilder AJ is nearly a 50-50 fight. You know, these things matter. I think with Kell Brook, I think he's finished. I'll be honest with you. I just think he's finished. And you know, Kell at his best at 147, probably a top 3 or 4 fighter in the division. You know, that's the best we could say from at any time there. And now he's probably a top 10 147.
But we don't. Kell at his best. We never really saw him against someone at their best. If you
saw him against Sean. We saw him against Sean Porter. That's his career high.
Pretty easily, I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, it's like go back and look at the scores in that fight. They're not like 10-2. They're like 7-5. Yeah. Most people score in that fight.
I think you could say that Kell Brook did as good a job as Furman and Garcia, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you combine the fact that he'd had to go all the way up to 160 and then all the way back down, as Jet
exactly.
the weight cut, yeah. You combine that with the damage Triple G done. You have to look at that and say, sort of like, that's got to be a massive part of why he gassed the way he did, why the body shots affected him the way he did, why mentally he fucking broke down the way he did. I just think without the Triple G fight, we're looking at a whole different Kell Brook.
And we've not seen Kell Brook at 154 either. With that this issue that surrounds him, he's jumped the weight that possibly he should naturally be.
Guarantee is now, right? We will not see Kell Brook in against 154 killers. We will never see those killer fights. The fights we're likely to see are him against, you know, British names or bad world champions.
The money's not there though, is it, for those fights?
I don't know you. And
the guy that tests himself, he's gone to Golovkin, he's gone to Spence, he's willing to take those big fights, risk or rewards. I don't see that happening.
There's no, like, Golovkin.
I don't think he's going to want to fight Dross for the next 5 years. I really don't, because even before the Triple G fight, if you look at every interview with Kell Brook, even then he was kind of like, I just want big fights now, and I just want to make.
Okay, well, put this to me. Tell me now, Eddie Hearn has been like the #1 man at Sky for I don't know how long, like 4 or 5 years now. probably 5 years, right? How many of his fighters have fought elite opposition in that time?
I think Eddie Hearn now knows that he's got to do it because there's so much competition. He's got to start putting these fights together.
And
he doesn't.
And with Kel,
how many fights? Only
so
two.
You think he's not going to put AJ in with Wilder and he's not going to put AJ in with Tyson Fury?
No, I think there are certain fights. There are exceptional fights where the money is so big that'll be made. Remember, he didn't want to put him in with. He didn't want to put him in with Spence.
But I think
it wasn't like he didn't want to put him in.
Now he's disposable. He's at that point in his career where he's disposable.
Yeah, I do.
I don't think so. I think that Eddie Hearn. Look, if Eddie Hearn can make fucking Tony Bellew a pay-per-view person, he can still get some mileage out of. At heavyweight, he can still get mileage out of Kell Brook. Like, say, Liam Smith versus Kell Brook. You're telling me that wouldn't be pay-per-view?
But that's not going to happen because of Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, but you never. We don't know if Smith's what type of contract Smiths have in 18 months. What could happen?
That ain't going to happen. He's not going to.
Sam Egginton.
Fuck that! Oh, not one that's Smith versus Brook. Fuck that, man.
I'm telling you, that's the type of fights that you're going to get. I don't think he's going to put him in with Jared Hurd or Lubin or Charlo.
Well, to be fair, Saddam Ali holds the WBO. Saddam Ali holds the WBO.
So there you go, Saddam Ali. That's exactly the type of fight
you're saying though, Tom, that Eddie Hearn didn't want him with Spence, but he fought Spence. So what does that tell you? It tells you Kell.
So it's telling you about the only reason he fought Spence because he was his mandatory.
Yeah, but
he won't have that problem until he gets the belt.
He said, well, I'm not going to go back down. I'm going to go to 154.
Oh yeah, I give Kell the credit for that. But I'm saying it's like I'm talking about.
He didn't make that decision.
Yeah. Do you know what? As well, I think I don't like the way
that only backs up my.
I don't.
You're saying that Eddie Hearn wouldn't put him in with certain people. Eddie Hearn didn't want him in with Errol Spence. He fought Errol Spence.
Yeah, because it was a pay-per-view fight. It was a pay-per-view fight at home where he got 80%.
But you just said Eddie Hearn didn't want him in it, and you're saying that Eddie Hearn doesn't want him to fight certain people. If the money's right, Kell Brook will take it because he's coming to the end and he wants those big monies.
I think.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a title. He doesn't have a title, Jay.
He's got a name.
So he's not going to get 80%.
He's got a name. He's got a name.
I think
titles don't mean shit.
I think the promoters are given too much credit as well. Like too many people blame the promoters when fights don't get made and whatnot. Yeah, like Oscar with the Canelo situation and whatnot. Let's be honest here. If a fighter like that wants to fight, yeah, they pay the promoter. I don't buy that. Like Eddie Hearn will be stopping certain fights from happening. If AJ or Kell Brook or somebody, if Kell Brook or AJ said, I want this fight, make it. Believe you me, Eddie Hearn's going to make it.
He will make it to the extent that he has to make it to keep his fighter happy. When it comes to somebody
the
like,
fighter calls the shot.
But,
that's what I'm saying.
Well, the fighter doesn't. They don't call the shots. It's not simple. It's not as simple as that. Like, AJ can call his shots, but like, say a young guy, Eddie Hearn can just say, "Oh, he can offer him shit money," and he can say, "Well, where the fuck else are you going to go?" The power dynamic is different between, say, between Ohara Davis and AJ.
Yeah,
but how they're treated is different.
Yeah,
but Kell Brook can now turn around and go to BT and go, fuck you.
Look,
he went, nah, you're all right, thanks, I'll go to BT. And he got
maybe.
There'll be more
maybe he will.
It's going to be
but it depends on his contract.
Market now as well. The market's going to be a lot more competitive now than it was with this BT deal. And
I just think
at the higher level anyway, Tom. That's what I meant. Is like fights like Canelo and whatnot. When everyone was blaming Oscar De La Hoya, believe me, that was Canelo that didn't want to get in with Triple G until he knew he had a chance of beating him.
Well, I'd say it's probably both. To be honest with you, I'd say
Canelo said he wanted to fight Kell Brook. What would happen?
It would happen. But like the thing is here, is that Kell Brook, say for example, he could dictate terms he get 80% of a purse against Spence. So that'll be a big money fight for him. But let's say he wants to take on a fighter like Jared Hurd or somebody like that in the States. He's not going to be getting £2 million for it. He's probably going to get like $400,000. So those fights aren't going to be made. The only fights that will be made or pay-per-view fights are in England. And those fights are less likely to be against the top guys. because he won't be able to command 80% of that purse like he was when he was the belt holder. You know, so I just think that we will not see him at the top end of that division. I think we'll see him versus Saddam Ali, exactly that type of a character.
Okay, so if he beats Saddam Ali, he wins
the worst title.
But if he wins that title,
yeah, well, then
you have some sort of leverage then to like unify a division or to go for someone else and get more money.
Well, Kell never unified, looked like him getting close to unifying any of the welterweights. I don't see why he would.
He may not do it, but he might get the opportunity. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the opportunity, I don't know. The opportunity is not there in that division. It's only a big money fight in England because they're the only poor fucking bastard in country that'll actually put a 154 title fight on pay-per-view. You know, so apart from Canelo, you know, so it's like you're kind of, you know, I just think that, look, since Eddie Hearn has had all of the matchroom fighters, you've had Joshua against Klitschko. That you can say is an elite fight matchup. Brook against Spence, elite fight matchup. Is there another?
To be honest, not a lot of big money fights at 154 anyway, to be honest. I don't think there's a lot of big money fights.
Say again, Tom.
Frampton versus Quigg.
Frampton Quigg is not elite, but it's a good matchup. But it's a domestic one.
His man in with an elite fighter, didn't he?
Who?
Quigg was the home fighter, and I'm saying Eddie stuck his man in with an elite fighter.
Yeah, he did, because at that weight,
yeah,
that's the biggest fight he can get.
With an elite fighter in the form of Crolla Linares. He stuck his man in with an elite fighter in the form of Campbell Linares. Mitchell.
No, Campbell Linares that's a different scenario because Campbell had nothing.
I'm talking about the times that he has his fighter fight an elite fighter. So all of them.
No, well, I'm talking. Yeah. Okay. I'd say the Crolla would definitely. That's another one.
Crolla.
But I won't. Crolla is fair enough, but not
AJ Klitschko, and we all sat here like about a year before the AJ Klitschko fight, and said, "There's no way Eddie will fucking put AJ with Klitschko and whatnot."
Yeah. I did. I absolutely did.
But that's three fights in 5 years, lads. 3 fights in 5 years.
But if
what's the question, Tom? Is the question, what are the occasions that Eddie has stuck his man in with an elite fighter? What is the question, when has Eddie made an elite fight?
It's about, like, and I'm not just slagging Eddie here. I would say the same with Frank Warren, but maybe to a lesser extent, probably the same with Frank Warren. It's like their A side that is like the big ticket seller, like a big A side, in with another elite fighter. But it's just very rarely done.
I could think of 10 examples that he has done that. Well, look, let's go. So Mitchell versus Crolla. Sorry, Mitchell versus Linares.
Linares was not. Linares, no, you can't pick that. Linares at the time was not thought of as an elite fighter.
Okay.
Absolutely
Linares
not.
And Campbell Linares. That's two.
Crolla Linares at the time was a strange one. Linares is not what we would. At the time, we would have said was an elite fighter. We thought he was the favourite. But I give you that. That's where he matched him wrong. I think he...
Campbell Linares.
No, because Campbell was sent away. Campbell was not the ticket seller. He was sent away to America on if he wins, fuck it, great. And if he doesn't, it's a different thing. That's where he gets a shot. It's like giving Stephen Smith a shot. Bellew versus Hayes, a money fight. That's not a fucking elite matchup. Come on now.
I'm not saying it's an elite matchup. I'm saying David Hayes an elite.
Yeah, that's a money fight. That's just a money fight. That's just
putting him in with a killer. Whatever.
Yeah, whether it's a money fight or not. Quigg Frampton.
For example, he didn't like if the equivalent. That's not the same as say putting Hay in or Bellew in with Bradis or Bellew in with what you call him,
Brooke Spence.
Brooke Spence. Brooke Spence is one. That's what I said. We have about 3 fights. We have 3 fights in 5 years, so it's not done.
Obviously, Joshua Klitschko, which we've already, I assume you're referring to.
This is what Eddie and Frank does. They get the weakest title and they hold it, and they try and get a domestic fucking big matchup off the back of it, which is usually against somebody who would probably only be ranked in the top 10. That's the typical model.
Trots Groves.
So, like, I don't think we'll see Kell Brook in against the top guys because he only ever did it to get the belt and then once in 2 money fights.
I think we'll probably see Kell Brook fight Saddam Ali.
you know.
I don't think by any stretch that's a certainty that he will beat Saddam Ali. But let's say he does beat Saddam Ali. I think we could see Kell Brook, Saddam Ali, and then Kell Brook, Liam Smith. I think that is a possibility.
Yeah, totally. That's what I see as well. That's not the top of the division. That's probably the bottom of the top 10.
But if Canelo can knock him, he'd take the fight, surely.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So he would put him in with the elite.
That's only, but that's not his division. That's a money fight. Money fights they're like a separate thing. You know, money fights are like a different thing. It's like Tony Bellew, David Hay. Of course, you put him in for a money fight. You don't care if he wins or loses because he's getting a load of money.
That's a because if the money's right and the big name is there, he'll do it.
No, but you're not expected.
No. An elite fighter, he'll never go near an elite fighter again. Well, then he would.
Right. He would never at 147 put him in with Thurman in America.
Why wouldn't he? He did it with Spence. Why wouldn't he do it with Thurman?
And the thing is,
and he was forced into it.
The thing he wasn't forced. That's bullshit. He wasn't.
Of course he was.
He could give up that title and say I'm stepping up to 154.
Yeah.
Have that option.
Yeah, he could. He could.
So why
and he'd be a bitch for doing it.
The thing is as well, Bellew Hay was seen as a killer at that time. Nobody knew David Hay was going to break his leg like that. And pretty much everybody thought Hay was going to smash Bellew. So that still fits like this like criteria that you've given, Irish.
It's not. It's a money fight. You're not going and trying to fight the best guys in your division. You're going looking for weird freak money fights like Brook versus Golovkin or Tony Bellew versus David Hay. Right? If Brook had gone at 147 and fought the best guys at 147, he won his title against a good guy who was 5 when he fought him. He took that belt. He defended it against Shy.
So if, for instance,
in his first season, got his arse handed to him.
If it had beaten Errol Spence, would he have fought Thurman?
Sorry, say again?
If it had beaten Errol Spence, would he have gone on to fight Thurman?
Well, he might have. He might have. But he hasn't. Like, you know, maybe because he'd think he would beat him then. But like Kell Brook's defense of the IBF title was the worst reign of terrors I've ever seen in my life. Seriously. Have you ever... Eddie, look, I'm not slagging Eddie. I'm saying the same with Frank Warren. He'll catch a belt. He will put them in against fucking useless fighters. And then do a domestic one that he can build up into a thing, which is certainly not against the top guys in the division. And sometimes they get forced into it. Or sometimes there's a money man, like there's a Canelo, and then you say, fuck it, I'll sell my belt for $2 million, $4 million. Of course you would. Because that'll be more than your other mandatory or your voluntary defences.
What about when Paul Smith went to fight Andre Ward?
What about that? When's Paul Smith going to get...
But I bet
of course he got paid well. He probably got 200 or 300 grand for a fat shite who's not even British level.
But he could have stayed in Europe and stayed in sort of money.
Yeah, well, of course you take it. Paul Smith's not an A-side. He's just a fucking guy sub-British level.
Yeah, but exactly.
Getting 200 or 300 grand. Of course you take it. We're not talking about...
But he was disposable. So Eddie Hearn, if he was at his peak and he was something special, you're saying Eddie Hearn wouldn't have gone near that fight.
Look, I don't know what I'm saying at this stage. Now we're talking about Paul Smith against fucking Andrew Ward. So obviously no one's understanding the fucking words.
Yeah. We've digressed.
Sorry.
110 of you guys watching live. If you are one of those 110, please hit the thumbs up button. Help support the channel. Less than half of you have done that at the minute. We've also had one new subscriber join us. Against all the odds, they've pressed subscribe despite listening to that diatribe. So shout out to that person.
Or Irish.
You've got the patience of a saint. Right. That's May. Let's talk about June. June was actually a quieter month. Paul Smith comes up for the second time this podcast as he took on Tyrone Zoiga. We also had the BG podcast Fighter of the Year, Andre Ward, defeat Sergei Kovalev by a devastating knockout. But June, obviously, you're looking at the mid-season break, I guess, at mid-year break at that sort of point. A slightly quieter month, gents. Any comments on Tyrone Zoiga versus Smith or Ward Kovalev?
Well, I just want to say I hate that my name is associated with a channel that has Andre Ward, the fucking most dirty fighter of the last fucking 20 years. This is fighter of the year. And I want to say that fight was an absolute fucking disgrace. A disgrace.
Yeah, and there's no way a fighter who has one fight should be fucking fighter of the year.
Yeah, that was terrible, man. That was fucking awful. BG, man, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for that.
Do you guys think that Andre Ward is the greatest super middle the world's ever seen?
No.
No, I think there's only one super middleweight that's ever, no one's going to pass, and we all know who that is. Paul Smith.
Paul Smith, yeah. If only Andre Ward had fought Paul Smith. Oh, it did happen. Right.
If Paul Smith waxed his chest, he'd be a lightweight.
There. Oh, moving on to July. Let me just pull up my notes. Oh, I thought Mayweather McGregor was July. That wasn't July, was it? That
August.
was.
I think that was August. Ask Paul. He'll know.
It was August. It was August.
Yeah,
so, Paul, you have a stay of execution for a whole nother month.
Viva McGregor.
We had Chris Eubank Jr. versus Arthur Abraham. Ohara Davies, Josh Taylor. Mikey Garcia versus Adrian Broner. And we had Jarrell Miller against Gerald Washington. Guys, your thoughts on July?
Ohara Davies versus Taylor. One of the fights of the year for me. Great fight, great build-up, great finish. Just really amazing performance by Josh Taylor. So to me, that was nearly my fight of the year. Great performance.
Remarkably, I actually think Taylor's performance against Miguel Vasquez was even more impressive.
Yeah, there was kind of, to me, like, it's just similar displays. I think he's by far the best fighter that's come out of Scotland since probably, I don't know, probably since Kent Buchanan. Like, I can't remember anybody in the 90s being anywhere close to being as good, or the 80s. So I think he's going to be an exceptional talent. And, you know, and he comes across really well. And it was on free-to-air television. Fucking one of the best fights of the year on free-to-air television. Big up Channel 5.
I'd go so far as to say I think Josh Taylor probably beats just about everybody at 140 already.
Not Mikey.
If he were to fight the likes of a Postol or a Indongo tomorrow, would you pick him?
I'd pick him against Indongo, definitely. Postol would be a more difficult fight. But I think he can beat Postol. I'm not saying I'd put money on it, but I think he can beat him.
Him and Mikey is a good fight.
Him and Mikey would be a good fight. I don't know if Josh Taylor wouldn't be a little bit too big for Mikey, though. He's a big 140 fighter, Josh Taylor. He's a big unit at 140, I think.
But, you know, Mikey's an exceptional talent, so I don't think he'll be too big. Like, I'd like to see Taylor fight somebody like Broner.
Because Broner's got a fight, hasn't he? Who's Broner got?
Has he?
I'm thinking Jet will know the answer to this. I'll have to Google it if he doesn't know.
I'm checking now. Checking now, mate.
Are you going to do a news section, Tom? Because if you're not, I don't know if anybody wanted to sort of like talk about this news on Ohara Davies as well.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to discuss it.
The mute button ready. Got it.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a fight lined up.
The only thing I will say in advance of discussing it is one of the big arguments is that it's unfair treatment that the Hearns have treated Ohara Davies in this fashion. And there are any number of examples of fighters and other sports people that they haven't treated with, you know, in a similar fashion, and that Ohara Davies is being made an unfair example of. And I think that argument is a very, very strong argument. But what I would ask is just stay clear of completely libeling sports people that I have absolutely no idea what their story is. If you want to talk about David Hay versus, some of the comments Hayes made, or some of the fighters Hearns had on after they've had failings in tests, then go ahead. But that would be my only request.
I mean, all I really wanted to say on it is I think, like, and I'm not somebody that likes Ohara Davies. I think he's a bit of a wanker, to be honest, and I don't think he's a great fighter either. But I think he's been a bit hard done by here. He wasn't on. A lot of people don't realise this. He wasn't talking about Liverpool at all. There was a who's the fighter he was having a back and forth with?
Tommy Coyle.
Tommy Coyle, and Tommy Coyle had some sort of situation with that as well. I just think he was naive, and I think he just like fucking opened his mouth, and I think he's a bit hard done by it, to be honest.
Yeah, Ohara Davies is 25 years old. He was born in 1992. Now, I'm not saying this is any excuse whatsoever, but he said in his statement that he released on Twitter that he was largely unaware of what had actually taken place during the Hillsborough disaster. Now, the Hillsborough disaster was in the late 80s. Ohara Davies was obviously born after that. He wouldn't have been taught about it at school, I don't think. I know that I wasn't taught about it at school. And I was only taught about it because I had a school teacher who was an obsessed Liverpool football fan who raised it several times. But, it's something that I only learned about in my teens. And there was no reference directly to the Hillsborough disaster in any of the, the tweets that I saw from Ohara Davies. Know that he's got a huge beef with Liverpool, and that Liverpool have a huge beef with him, and that there's been a number of quite unsavoury incidents between Ohara Davies and Liverpool fans, and vice versa, and they've kind of put two and two together. But I could see myself agreeing with Paul that I do not think what he did necessarily conclusively has any link to that Hillsborough disaster whatsoever. The other thing I'd say, and this is the other reason that I've struggled with this story, is I appreciate the Hillsborough disaster is very linked to the sun, and I appreciate it's a very, very difficult topic of conversation, and people who are affected by that disaster detest the sun. But the Sun is as I understand it, is Britain's highest selling newspaper. I believe that the people who own the Sun have a level of ownership in Sky. And I believe that lots of boxing is covered in the Sun. So I found the whole thing slightly strange, and I haven't really seen how it's all linked up, if I'm honest.
Well, I just think people put two and two together and came up with like 71, and like at the end, like I remember the Hillsborough disaster. I'm old enough to remember it, but I think it's completely conceivable that Ohara Davies doesn't have a clue what happened there, and certainly not sort of like what transpired with the way the Sun reported it and whatnot. That like they reported that Liverpool fans were pickpocketing dead people and this, that, and the other. And
pissing on the corpses.
Pissing on the corpses, but yeah, and then they later had to apologise for it. But like, I don't think that's necessarily something that young somebody of his age would know about. Do you know what I mean? It's not something. It's so many years ago. So I just think his comments were just about Tommy Coyle. I think they were completely innocent, and I think he's a bit hard done by here. I really do.
Did anybody see the latest tweets from Matchroom?
No.
They said that Eddie Hearn and Barry Hearn have been suspended and had their shares confiscated from them for writing for the Sun.
Yeah, Barry Hearn has written for the Sun, has he, Tom?
He has. The level of hypocrisy is fucking mind-blowing. So you must wonder what's going on behind the scenes as Ohara Davies being wrecking their heads. Because the level of, you couldn't actually create a higher level of hypocrisy. I
wonder if there is something more to it, Tom, because look, usually I go toe to toe with you on these kind of topics, but in this occasion, I'm actually not going to disagree. You know, there was the AJ situation, which we've been over. We don't need to go over it again. But that was all brushed under the carpet. You know, and now you've had this situation where you've had all these statements released and his manager and trainer dropping him and him being kicked off the Matchroom. So,
yeah.
You wonder, has he done some things behind the scenes that have already upset people? Was he already on a final warning? You're right. It doesn't really add up, does it?
It leaves a bad taste in the mouth. This whole thing does, to be honest.
Look, and Ohara Davies has said lots of fucking things that are pretty awful on Twitter as well. You know, he slagged Robbie Davis's dad who's got Alzheimer's or something like this, you know. And he said some things that he actually, they could have done this to him already for. If yes. You know. But this wasn't one of them. Not that I can see. No one has shown any evidence that this is the one. And the excuses they give, and all these people like Tony Bellew and these people, you know, a lot of these people are snakes. Tony Bellew giving out about the Sun. Has anybody seen, I think there's been a Twitter thing going around now, and Paul Smith and Tony Bellew both fighting on a poster for, and it's sponsored by the Sun. You know, the level of hypocrisy by all these people.
2007 poster, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, 2007. So these people are just hypocrites, you know. And Tony Bellew is a fucking company man. He really is a company man. And, you know, Ohara Davies, you know, I kind of feel sorry for Ohara Davies as well, because, you know, I kind of bigged him up because he made the effort to try and make himself a persona, you know, and to sell himself as the heel. But, you know, unfortunately, like, Eubank can do it because Eubank Sr. is actually very bright and he you know, he knows how to do it. But Ohara is just a bit of a fucking, you know, he's a bit of a slow tool. You know what I mean? And he's after getting himself in trouble here. And who's looking out for him? You wonder who's looking out for him in these things. Why would a trainer sack him over a small thing like that? It just seems like, you know, and that's just a Matchroom gym, so he's probably forced. But, you know, the whole thing just stinks.
It seems like a very, very strange situation. I mean, one thing I would say is, look, clearly this is a very, very unpleasant situation all in all. But is it possible that in the long run this will be a case of publicity is good publicity for Ohara Davies? You know, even though this is quite a difficult story, his name value is probably at an all-time high. You know, maybe we'll see him headlining or so in April rather than on an undercard in February. You know,
the only thing is though, he's not that good. He's probably only top 5 British light welterweights. You know, something like that. He's in the mix with Jack Catterall and all these boys. So he's not like he's a star. So like, there's a load of guys that are decent fighters that never get the push. You know, and they just kind of lounge around. So he might just actually get thrown in the rubbish dump because he's not actually that good.
No, I mean, I think if Ohara Davies hadn't have sort of like you know, run his mouth the way he has, I think probably very few fans aside from hardcore would even know who he is at this point.
Yeah,
only his mouth that's got him kind of like known. It's not anything he does in the ring, that's for sure.
I think that's. I saw an interview with him some time ago where he said that he'd still be fighting on your call undercards, whereas, you know, now he was a guy who'd earned a lot of money and had a high profile. And yeah, I do think there's a lot of truth in that, to be honest. But yeah, he does appear to take it too far sometimes. But as Irish Tom said, whilst he does appear to take it too far sometimes, he's probably taken it a hell of a lot further in the past than with this incident.
Yeah.
But certainly encouraged by Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn would have had a big deal to do with this. He would have encouraged him to be a little bit controversial, to sell these tickets, to make him a bigger name, to make more money for Matchroom. I believe the Sims are his management as well, of course. Is that right? Coach and management?
That's correct. They've
they should be advising him. They should be guiding him. This is what a coach should do. You know, Customado guided Mike Tyson the best as he could, and we see how he fell apart once he died. And the problem is, by saying what Ohara Davies said, he alienated a city. He alienated a city where Matchroom have big shows and make a lot of money. And their reaction is, boom, throw him under the bus. Simple as that.
Do you know what though? Again, I'm not looking to call out any particular individual here. If I was Ohara Davies, I wouldn't be overly distraught at being dropped by Tony Sims. You know, you look at the options that will be available to Ohara Davies in terms of a training perspective, and you know who he could go and train with. You wouldn't think Tony Sims would be the make or break of his career. Let's put it that way.
No, I think like an Adam Booth would be perfect for someone like him.
Booth,
you know, or possibly an Ingle, just that will mentor him. He needs mentoring, that kid, because there's obviously no one looking out for him, as Irish Tom said, and he needs someone there to guide him. Chris Eubank Jr. has that in his dad, who's been there, seen, done it, and has that guidance. Do you know what I mean? Unless you've got a level head on your shoulders and a mature head on your shoulders, like a Daniel Dubois, for instance, who's very level-headed for such a young age, he needs that mentor and that guidance.
I saw Hatman do a video on it, and I thought Hatman's video on it was excellent. To be honest, it was one of the main reasons that I didn't do a video on it, is because I thought Hatman's video was so conclusive. I didn't think there was anything I could add whatsoever. He talked about joining Ohara Davies joining the Eubanks. He also talked about Ohara Davies joining the Mayweathers. You know, so you throw, I don't know how realistic either of those options are, but you talk about those options. You talk about Booth. You talk about Ingle. You know, all of those are possibilities. And when you sort of compare and contrast those with Tony Sims in the Matchroom gym, you kind of think maybe he'll bounce back. Maybe it'll actually not be the worst thing that he got dropped there. Anyway, let's keep it rolling, because this was supposed to be a short pod, and we're actually on course for it to end up being a very, very long pod. So let's move to August. We saw the end of Nathan Cleverly against Badu Jack. We saw the best fighting the best. Complete unification at 140 between Terence Crawford and Julius Ndonga. We saw Lomachenko versus Marialga. And perhaps the biggest fight of the year, certainly from a commercial perspective, we saw Floyd Mayweather Jr. entering the ring as an underdog, at least in some people's imaginations, against your man Paul Conor McGregor. August, a month that will probably go down in boxing history for all the wrong reasons.
This is so funny. Do you know what? Some people I've seen in some of the comments and that, some people actually do think I actually picked Conor, that I picked him to win.
Yeah, gossip myself, Jet.
It's the power. It's the power. You don't understand his power.
Paul, I've got something for you. Paul, I've got something for you.
Have you?
Oh, dear.
Irish takeover.
Yes.
And there we go, boys.
There's no fighter better, and he's going to knock out Floyd Mayweather.
Just for you, Paul. Just for you, Paul.
Warjet.
Indeed. Okay, we'll browse over August, I think. September saw the start of the World Boxing Super Series. Alexander Usyk took on Marco Huck. We had our first rematch, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Saur Rungvisai. We had Daniel Dubois score a chilling knockout against AJ Carter. We had Callum Smith taking on Eric Skoglund, what turned out to be a very, very difficult fight in the World Boxing Super Series. Sad news followed that Eric Skoglund went into a medically induced coma. Thankfully, we understand that coma was unrelated to the Smith fight, I should add, but we understand that he's on the road to recovery, which is fantastic news. Billy Joe Saunders took on Willie Monroe Jr. Luke Campbell fought Jorge Linares in a spirited attempt. We saw a fight that turned out to be one of the biggest disappointments of 2017, Hughie Fury versus Joseph Parker. And we also had another elite versus elite matchup, the two top guys in the division getting it on. This time, perhaps the most glamorous example of all, Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Triple G Golovkin. So, guys, what a month September was.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of lasting memory from that Triple G Canelo was, you know, like Canelo after like the Lara fight, sort of like went on and on about, you know, Mexican style fighting and how Lara had fucking run and that, and then Canelo like pretty much did the same thing for like about 80% of that fight for me. You know, he did a couple of little things in bursts, but other than that, I thought, you know, like I thought Triple G won that fight quite clearly. You know, for me, Triple G is I've got him. I haven't really got a pound for pound list, but for me, I've probably got him second in the pound for pound list. Triple G. That's the lasting thing from that fight. I wanted to say something about Terence Crawford. I know as well, but I know you've moved on from that a little bit. I don't understand. Can anybody explain to me why Indongo is seen as such a great win? Like Indongo had a very, very quick. Was it Shabran? It wasn't Shabran. What was the name of the guy he iced before the Ricky Burns fight?
It escapes me.
Troyanovsky, I think it was. I could have that wrong. It was some kind of ski. He like just come out and iced him really quickly, which can happen to anyone. And then he beat Ricky Burns. I mean, like, I don't really understand how either of those wins.
Do you know?
Make him.
Do you know what, Paul? Sorry, I don't think it's a matter of the fact where it was seen as a massive win. I think it was the opponent. Such, I think it was seen that was the point where he unified the division. Beforehand, he'd put in some really, really impressive performances. You know, completely outclassing people, and the fact, and Dongo, all of us, when it comes to Ricky Burns, he was very awkward, very, very awkward. That guy fights. You know, he's not a run-of-the-mill opponent, and you know, there was some people, I'm not saying that Crawford wouldn't win, but there were some people that thought this could be a difficult task because of how awkward this guy is. He's very unorthodox, but I think it's the culmination of him unifying the division, which was more of the point, rather than opponent could have been anyone. There would have been a lot of you know, a lot of press around that purely because he unified that division.
I think you're right. I just like, my point is kind of like, you know, people seem to have a criteria that they base pound for pound on, and it's usually resume. It's usually like, who have you beaten and who have they beaten and stuff like that. And I just think, like, if you look at Crawford, like, but Ndongo, Postol, and Gamboa, who was like half his size, are probably his best wins. I just think Crawford's resume is not as strong as people seem to sort of like make out. I know he unified a division. That's an achievement, but I don't know. It's just, for me, it's not enough to put him at number one. For me,
I think it's just the way he dealt with these people, the way he dispatched them. It wasn't just a win; it was a dominant, fantastic, skillful performance in every department. I mean, the guy would he always gives it. I love him, and the first couple of rounds he starts, and then he just weighs up his opponent and he just watches, and he can adapt so quickly and so easily to the point where he's just playing with people.
I mean,
like Lomachenko does, he plays with people.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of Terence Crawford. As far as like what he does in the ring, I think he's a fantastic fighter. My point is, I don't think his resume warrants number one pound for pound yet. That's my personal view. I don't think on resume, I don't think he's there.
It's a hard one. I mean, this is the debate that constantly comes up. What essentially he has done is step through several divisions and pretty much been the consensus number one fighter in both. At welterweight, he has, you know, proved absolutely dominant. He's completely unified. I think one of the very rare examples in modern day boxing of completely unifying, you know. And he's just done it in devastating fashion. You know, he's looked completely dominant. I think 147 gives the opportunity to create the all-time great resume. You know, if we can be talking about this guy who takes out Furman, takes out Spence, you know, and starts to unify a title again at 147, then I think we can start talking about him as a, you know, someone who we talked about for years to come.
Definitely.
I think he's a difficult man to weigh up because he's almost like a Vladimir Klitschko was. You know, he's beaten everyone. He's beaten everyone well. But yeah, I agree. Who's the very best fighter he's ever beaten? Possibly Victor Postol.
I mean, and even the Postol, like I don't view that as an amazing performance. I thought it was a very negative performance. I thought he was on the run for most of that fight. You know, like I don't know. I'm a fan of Terence Crawford, but I just want him to. If he was to have some good wins at welterweight, then that would be a matter. But at this point, I just don't think he's done enough to warrant it.
But I think he's done everything that he can do that is put in front of him. You know, he can't do no more than unify his division, can he? And as you said, I think possibly 470 is when you really, you know, when you really will find out how good he is. And I think personally, I think he'll pretty much do what he's done already. I just think he's that good.
I agree. I think Spence might be the only guy he potentially has some problems with, but I think he probably will do that. And at that point, you know, definitely, you know, I'd give him all the credit in the world. I just think, like, you know, even at 140, I don't, you know, he unified the division, yeah, but like. He had, like, I wouldn't say he fought everybody. You know, guys like Hank Lundy. I mean, that was only a few fights ago he fought Lundy. You know, I think there's better guys that he could have been fighting than him, and I just think, you know, he's done an incredible thing in unifying the division. But I just think, you know, there's guys with much better wins, much stronger wins. Currently active in boxing right now that I think deserve to be higher up on the pound for pound list than him.
Guys, I think we've been left by both Irish Tom and by Jet, I believe. I know Jet is still showing as with us, but I think he is either departing or departed. So it's just the three musketeers to close out the show. But yeah, I'm sure we will.
Irish. Is Irish gone for good?
He's gone. Yeah, he's gone. I didn't realise he'd gone, but he has. He sent a message saying he's going to have to run. So we'll plough on to October, where we had AJ versus Takam. I was mean to Paul earlier, so in the interest of consistency, I'll remind Jay that he thought there was no chance Takam would get out of the first 3 rounds. We had White versus Hellenius. We had the debut of Joe Joyce defeating Ian Lewison by stoppage. We had George Groves scoring a devastating knockout over Jamie Cox. We had Eubank scoring a devastating knockout over Avni Yildirim. We had one of the worst British heavyweight title fights you will ever see, with Sam Sexton pipping Gary Cornish. October, another big month for boxing. I enjoyed Joe Joyce's debut very much. I enjoyed Groves Cox very much. You know, for me, that was George Groves really showing what he's got, you know. And I enjoyed Eubank as well. Eubank Yildirim, for me, could potentially be a bit of a turning point in Eubank's career. I really enjoyed the boxing in October. Any commentary, guys?
Well, Eubank looked good against Yildirim. He really did. But I mean, Yildirim was a bit of an unknown, and we don't, you know, I mean, he did look good. I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm kind of like, this is one of them fights that, you know, that Eubank Groves. Groves looked really good in that, in the you know, the world title win. Looked pretty good against Jamie Cox, but I don't really rate Jamie Cox that much. I keep going back and forward on this fight, you know, the Eubank Groves fight. I kind of felt quite strongly that Eubank could win. But then I've heard a couple of people talking about it, and I've kind of been convinced a little bit. He hasn't been in with a puncher, and certainly not at 168. And, you know, it's an interesting one for me. obviously this is looking forward a bit, but yeah, that's all.
I mean, let's be honest. He's not been in with anyone.
No, apart from Saunders, and he lost. So
his career has been so well managed to get to this point. Now, this is the point where we find out whether he's the real deal, because he's going up against a good fighter in George Groves. But Quinlan, you know, who was he? No one gave him a chance. Arthur Abraham was a big opponent for Chris Eubank Jr. The perfect opponent, and very clever. And I said this before, he's very clever because he's a big name. He's been around. He's a tough guy, but he's perfect for Eubank Jr.
Yeah.
Yildirim,
and he was old.
Heard of him? No one had heard of him. Is he going to win a world title? No chance. Not in a million years. So, you know, and the hype just grows and grows and grows. And it's very well managed, really well managed, I think.
Yeah, he has been every step of the way. Did you guys see? I actually put a video up about it a few hours ago. Did you guys see this tweet about Eubank being underweight?
Yeah, I saw your video.
What do you make of that? Is that something you can believe?
Yeah, I can. I do believe it, because he is obviously a very natural gifted athlete. That's one thing you know about him. He's naturally gifted. He never looks out of shape. He always looks good, disciplined, but also he's very lucky that he's obviously got the genetics that are very, not like a Billy Joe Saunders or a George Groves, where they will put on weight in between fights, or a De Gale. He's just naturally gifted in that way. And I don't think necessarily he is a super middleweight, is he? Let's be honest. He's a middleweight, really. I think he could quite easily go down to the middleweight and fight there. But I think he took the super middleweight knowing this competition was coming up. And I think he thought, yeah, this is a good opportunity for me, you know, because that fight, the only fight that we're talking about in middleweight was Billy Joe Saunders, and that just never seemed to materialise, did it?
And Triple G, I mean, didn't he? I know I don't know if he's ever missed weight, but hasn't he had to come back to the scales a couple of times at middleweight?
Yeah, I mentioned this in my video. He's had to come back to the scales several times at middleweight, and I am of the belief that he is a genuine super middleweight. You know, I'm very skeptical of those scales. I think he's a very, very big guy at middleweight, and I don't believe he's currently walking around at 11 stone 10.
I mean, my initial thought was a bit like Jay. Like, I think he is a guy that stays fit. You know, he's not a guy he's not like a Ricky Hatton, is he? That's fucking eating pies when he's not in camp. You know, this is a guy that is always, you know, fit and stuff. But it does seem a little bit light for me at this far out. It just seems a little bit strange, because what that would say would be that, like, the couple of pounds he was over at 160. What is it? 163. He was. What was it, Tom?
164.
164. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, look, the game players out there, the Eubanks are game players. They're very clever game players, and it's entirely possible to just digitally adjust the scale so it weighs a little bit less. That, I don't think that's, you know, like really difficult to do. To put out the kind of like the sort of like vibe, or the sort of like message that they're trying to put out. They're all about playing games and mind games and whatnot. And George Groves is somebody that's, I think, is susceptible to stuff like that. He's shown in.
But what's his biggest asset? What's Eubank Jr.'s biggest asset? His biggest asset is his speed and his stamina.
His engine.
A little bit lighter. He's not really concern him, because he's not a banger, is he? He's constant. He's constant. But he has said that he would move up again.
I'd be worried about it from the other perspective, though. It's more that if Eubank is genuinely 11 stone 10, well, he's going to be getting clipped by the biggest puncher of his career, and that guy is going to be 13 stone. You know, there's a limit. There's a limit. If he genuinely only is 11 stone 10, which, by the way, would be far smaller than most middleweights when they step into the ring, I think it's going to get to a point, if he's getting hit by a 6'1", 13-stone fighter like George Groves, I think that's going to be hard for him to take.
I mean, his chin is untested. We don't have any idea about his chin at all.
Yeah.
Because, like,
but there is a lot of rumours that he has a fantastic chin, and if he's got that from his dad, who had an amazing chin, then it might be something that they don't fear, and then maybe they just think he's far too quick for George Groves. He's very, very quick, very quick.
I mean, chins are not always handed down. If you look at Joe Frazier had an amazing chin, and then his son Marvis Frazier had an absolutely awful chin. So
of course, yeah, of course.
Down. I think there's, gym rumors and stuff. I pay about as much attention to as any other rumors. Like, we have no evidence for that chin yet, do we? Spike O'Sullivan is probably the biggest shot I've seen him take.
Yeah, and the other thing, by the way, is if he legitimately does have a world-class chin, and if he is legitimately a middleweight, he may have a world-class chin and be a middleweight, and he may get clipped by George Groves, who is fighting at cruiserweight on fight night, or will be fighting at a weight that would be within the cruiserweight limit, and he may still get knocked out,
Yeah, but I mean, he'll be a lot bigger than that on fight night still, even though.
But if we believe he's 11 stone 10 today, Paul, if we genuinely believe that, then I don't think he will be a lot bigger than that on fight night, because he's not going to add muscle, he's not going to add fat, he's not going to be dehydrated, is he? You wouldn't want to be dehydrating to cut weight. So my point is, George Groves is probably 13 stone. He'll dehydrate to 12 stone and rehydrate back to 13 stone. Where does someone like Eubank get that option from, though? Because where's that extra weight coming from?
I mean, George Groves will be the bigger man on the night. I definitely believe that. But what I'm saying is that he'll be bigger than he is now. Look, I'm not so sure that's genuine either. I think they probably digitally altered those. I'm not sure he's that light now. I'm not.
But this sort of fits into the Eubank profile, doesn't it, really? Everything he does is not the way it should be done. If we were to believe everything that he says, he's saying that he trains himself and, he doesn't have a pad man and he's got some guy off the street or something to do his pads for him. Possibly it is bullshit. Possibly it is just mind games. Possibly it isn't, though. He's odd. He's an odd guy and very unorthodox. Even the way he fights, you can see that.
Yeah, and he's been raised by an even more odd guy. You've got to think that's got to have. Imagine, like, that's who your role model is. That's who's teaching you, like, right from this is how to be a man. Is fucking Eubank Sr. I think it's entirely possible that some of that stuff is kind of legit. The whole, like, not having a trainer and stuff. If that is true, that's going to come back to bite him on the ass. There's points.
Yeah.
When you're in hot water, when you're in deep, when you've got problems, you can't be the only one that's thinking there. You can't be.
Yeah, correct.
Because you can't gauge when you're in a fight. You can't gauge what you do. You can't gauge how well it's going. Always. I mean, maybe some fighters can, but you need somebody there that can, advise you. I think that's going to be a real problem for him if he does do that. If that is true.
Absolutely. We'll move it on to November, guys. But just as we're doing that, let me say 127 of you watching live now. Just about half of you hitting the thumbs up. So please continue to do that, which will mean this gets a bit more attention when it's uploaded to YouTube. I'm also going to say I've just had a notification that as we've been live, somebody has just signed up to my Patreon. So thank you very much indeed. Whoever that was, you know who you are. Massively appreciate it. It was you, was it? I'm somehow
No.
But yeah, you do enough to assist already.
I wouldn't give money to listen to me.
Yeah, indeed. Many thanks to whoever that is, and I will be in touch when I finish this broadcast or the day after or so. So thank you for that. Let us move it on to November. Wilder took on Bermain Stiverne in perhaps the worst rematch of all time. Liam Smith versus Liam Williams, disappointed in another rematch. Josh Taylor versus Miguel Vasquez. Josh Taylor looked fantastic for me. Eddie Hearn debuted in New York with Jarrell Miller versus Marius Wack and Danny Jacobs versus Luis Cuba Arias. Carl Frampton returned to the ring against Horatio Garcia. Jamie Conlon was destroyed by Yerwin Ancajas. Kovalev returned against Sobransky. Manuel Char won a minor WBA belt against Alexander Ustinov. And Gamboa kept his career alive just by scraping past Jason Sosa. Another action-packed month, guys.
Yeah, action-packed, but not very inspiring in a way. You know, there was a lot of mismatches there, really, wasn't there? I think Josh Taylor, obviously, the standout. Gerald Miller being Irish Tom's, I know he can't defend himself, he's not here, but Irish Tom's favourite to be the next world heavyweight champion, which never going to happen. It was an interesting month, but not an inspiring month for me.
Yeah, it didn't have the sort of world-class matchups that some of the other months happened. But still.
But just a lot of disappointment, Tom, really. There's a lot of disappointment there. You know,
there was. Something... It could have been a great month, couldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. You got excited by that. The two Liams rematch was something that, you know, we'd been waiting for quite a while to see that again. And unfortunately, it just didn't really live up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. 100%. In December, God, lots of fights in December. Bloody hell. Bizarrely, I've started it off with David Price versus Sokolovsky.
As always.
Billy Joe Saunders versus David Lemieux. Vasyl Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux. James DeGale versus Truax. Anthony Yard versus Szlocka. Lee Selby returns. Luis Ortiz returns. Jeff Horn versus Gary Corcoran. Alexander Povetkin versus Christian Hamer. So Vasyl versus Rigo. Billy Joe versus Lemieux. Probably, and maybe even James DeGale. Throw him into the mix. Those are the ones that we're going to remember, I guess.
The good and the bad, really, Tom, there. I think, obviously, a lot was overshadowed by the end of the month by Billy Joe Saunders, who was, as we talked about, exceptional. The Loma Rigo is something that we all look forward to. We all enjoyed it afterwards, giving Irish Tom some stick over his prediction. What we thought would be a walk in the park for James DeGale basically got pulled out and showed up, and a lot of questions are being asked towards him now. Where's he go? What's he going to do? Lee Selby the same, pretty much cruised to the victory, and was really, Jeff Horn was really nice to watch that at that time of the day. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's always good. Sometimes I used to buzz off that with Joseph Parker fights.
Yeah.
You know, you used to get them sort of a nice lunchtime fight, which is always yeah. I think December is, funnily enough, is a month that will go down in a bit of boxing history. I think it's the night that Billy Joe Saunders became elite. It's the night that James DeGale, one of Britain's top fighters for several years, probably showed he was no longer elite. And I think Vasyl Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux will be a fight that will be referred to. You know, any number of fights we're talking about in future will say, but remember what happened when, you know, Lomachenko took on Rigondeaux. We saw someone who'd been so inactive, or, you know, we saw someone who, you know, was changing weight classes and that sort of thing. So, I think
it's funny. Those catch weighty fights, or those people moving up or whatever, it hasn't worked out for the little guys, has it? It seems to have worked out for the big guys every time. Maybe that's a lesson.
Yeah,
I think it's probably going to be remembered as the fight where Rigo just sort of like killed his fucking own career. I think between sort of quitting, you know, pretending his hand was hurt, turned out to be a contusion, which is a bruise for anybody that doesn't speak medical talk, and then fucking like in the interview afterwards, just sort of like, you know, refusing to give Loma credit and stuff. I think just on the whole, he just killed his fucking career that night. I don't think we'll ever see Rigo in a big fight again, to be completely honest.
Sad.
It is quite sad.
Certainly was. Certainly was. Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? My counter argument to that would be what killed his career was probably the period 2013 to 2017. When he did so little and, you know, was so inactive and was fighting so many poor names that essentially he was forced into taking that Vasyl Lomachenko fight because, you know, his career trajectory was just headed down and down and down, and there wasn't opportunity for him elsewhere, I guess. But it's kind of a sad state of affairs all in all.
But I mean, the thing is, Tom, if he'd have sort of like if he'd have fought on, if he'd have gone out on a shield, and then, you know, like been a bit gracious in defeat and, you know, and stuff like that, I think, you know, his most of his fans would have you know, stuck with him, stuck by him, would have. Do you know what I mean? I think the way he went out played a big. I agree. It, you know, that the years inactive and stuff and not fighting anybody was a big part of it as well. But I think he could have salvaged something if he'd have, you know, just conducted himself a little bit differently on the night. For me, you know.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Good stuff. Any more comments on December, or does that kind of wrap us up?
That's it for me, I think.
Yeah, it's about it.
Good stuff. So that's kind of brings us to a close of what we put down to discuss. Do either of you have any more comments? Any other topics? Anything else to reference to throw in?
Paul?
I just like, you know what, the year's been a fantastic year. It's been an absolutely fantastic year. It's been sort of like soured a little bit, blighted, if you like, by a couple of things. One is dodgy scorecards. We've talked about this a lot. You know, I fear for sort of boxing in the UK if those dodgy scorecards continue, because it's just going to have a negative effect, a knock-on effect. It was the case in Germany for a while, wasn't it? A lot of fighters like were getting robbed in Germany, and it did result in like nobody wanted to go there and fight. That worries me. It worries me that sort of like certain things like like Tony Weeks in the Kovalev Ward fight, just like, I don't know. I look, this is my opinion. This is only my opinion. I don't want to say anything sort of like libelous or whatever. But for me, he seemed like a referee that had taken a bribe that night. He nothing he was doing was making any sense. The stoppage didn't make any sense and stuff like that. Those things are just like left ever such a slightly sour taste in my mouth. As somebody that's been watching boxing for a lot of years, as far as the fights made, this has been one of the best I can even remember. It's a shame that it's been kind of like soured a little bit by those things. That's all.
Yeah, it's been the best year of boxing since I've been covering boxing, which is not a huge length of time. And do you know what? 2018 could be every bit as good, mate. It's the schedule for 2018 is ridiculously strong, especially if you factor in some of the fights that look like they're about to be announced as well, like Stevenson Jack and, you know, those sort of things. I do think you're right, unfortunately. I actually was making a note as you were discussing that. I'm just going to briefly read out the fights that have been affected by some sort of judging controversy, just off the top of my head. Martin Murray versus Gabe Rosado, Terry Flanagan versus Petr Petrov, Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko. I know that fight was to knockout, but some of the scorecards at the time of the knockout were a bit off, in my opinion anyway. Maybe not in everyone else's opinion. Canelo versus Triple G. That's one that wasn't off in my opinion, but was off in a number of people's opinions.
Well, you think Adelaide Bird's card was off 8-4? You didn't think that was off 8-4 to Canelo?
Yeah, sorry, you're spot on. Yeah, yeah. I was ineloquent. What I was trying to say is the result being a draw, I didn't have a massive problem with. But regardless, yeah, that scorecard is a bad scorecard, regardless.
Yeah.
Huey Fury versus Joseph Parker. For me, the 118-110 scorecard in favour of Joseph Parker in that fight is one that, leaves me questioning my own sanity. You know, and then a few other maybe lesser ones towards the end of the year as well. But you're right. Just as many big fights as there have been, there's been a hell of a lot of controversy.
I'd just like to see some more done about this. Like, they seem to just happen and then just fade from memory. And I don't really I don't know if you guys can sort of like say, no, well, I do or whatever. I don't often hear about anything happening about any of this. It seems to just be swept under the rug and stuff. I'd like to see judges like going for retraining if they give cards like that a few times on the trot or whatever. I'd like to see something happen.
I think the problem is with judging, it is really subjective, and this is not a new problem. This is something that's been happening for years. It's been very highlighted because it's happening in a lot of big fights, but it's very difficult. So, Tom, for instance, you said you watched Danny Jacobs. Now, the first time you had it one way, the second time you watched it, you had it another way. Yeah. The problem is with being a judge, obviously, you don't get a second chance.
Yeah. So I'd have turned in a scorecard for Daniel Jacobs, which was the wrong scorecard.
But Tom, did you actually sit with a pencil and paper and score it the first time, or was that just sort of your sort of like impression having? Because the thing is two different things: sitting and scoring a fight, and sitting and as a fan and wanting to actually take it in and enjoy it. If I'm going to score a fight, I'll watch it again the following day, because I can't enjoy a fight and score it.
I'll be honest, I don't remember for that specific fight.
But then it's what you score on, isn't it? We've been here before. It's like the Golovkin Canelo. What were you scoring on? Some people are outraged, either way, that one didn't win it. There was, and I would say it's funny. I'm more of a prefer than a banger and a go forward guy, but I to Triple G against Canelo. So
yeah. Do you know what though? I do watch fights twice and have different scorecards both times. Yeah. And Jay, is spot on in that the judge doesn't have that luxury. The other thing I've said before is, whenever I've been to live boxing, even if you're sat absolutely ringside, my belief is even if you are ringside, you do not have as good a view of the boxing as if you are watching on TV. I've often wondered, would it be better to have the judges not at the stadium? Why do the judges need to be at the stadium? If they're at the stadium, they're hugely affected by the crowd, and they're only ever able to see the fight from one angle. When a fighter's back is towards you, it's very, very, very hard to tell if that jab the opponent throws just falls short or just clips the fighter. When you're watching on TV, you may actually have a better view.
That's a good point. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if like more than 3 judges or like like you say, like maybe have them like in the building but in a room watching on a monitor where there's more angles and whatnot. I don't know, but
the other one was just in the interest of completeness. Do you remember Lee Haskins, Ryan Burnett, where the judge scored the fight to the wrong guy?
Yeah.
It's sublime ridiculousness.
That's just ineptitude, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. I've never. I mean, that's at least we can say that's a one-off, because I've never known that to happen in my life. I mean, that judge even admitted like he like got them mixed up, which is fucking incredible. Absolutely incredible.
The CJ Ross card, which I appreciate is now from several years ago, will always be the one that hits me the most. That was, for me, the worst scorecard I think I've seen.
Which was?
So he scored Canelo Floyd a draw.
Yeah, there was the first Tim Bradley Manny Pacquiao fight as well. I think it was the first fight. Was it the first fight?
The first fight Bradley won,
Yeah,
which was controversial. Yeah.
Yeah, and Manny clearly won it. Manny clearly fucking won it.
Do you know what? It's been so long since I've watched that fight. I won't argue with you because I don't remember it in sufficient detail.
There was massive controversy at the time. Everybody said Manny had won it.
But that's unlikely to be a robbery because, sorry, I mean, that's unlikely. You know, sometimes that's probably, I mean, Pacquiao was the big name fighter, the money fighter, the fan favorite. You know, it's probably, that was just one where people sort of fight differently.
I mean, I don't think the big money thing is always the only factor. You know, like somebody like Tim Bradley was also, you know, it's not like he was a nobody.
No.
And if there is going to be controversy and if there is going to be corruption in boxing, which, look, we know there is corruption in boxing, then the person that actually like instigate that and pay somebody is not necessarily going to come from the A side. It just like that's, you know, it's illogical, isn't it? And so, like, that was a robbery for me. I mean, like, nobody could believe it at the time. I can remember it quite clearly. Nobody could believe it. It was a clear robbery.
You're right. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Well made, Paul. Jay, anything further from yourself?
No, I'm all done, mate. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'll wrap it up, guys. Thank you both very much for your time this evening and every other evening. I hope you and also Tom and Jet, who also joined, have a very, very happy new year. Few thank yous. Thank you to the 82 people who have already hit the thumbs up button on this one. Thank you to the 2 new subscribers who've subscribed as we've been live. Thank you to all the regulars who tune into every pod we do. Thank you to the person who signed up to the Patreon during the broadcast. Appreciated more than you will know. So yeah, thanks all. Hope everyone's enjoyed the content. It's been a full podcast. I imagine we'll be back next Wednesday as per normal at 8:30. We'll have to put our heads together and come up with some topics because the agenda in boxing is still a little bit quiet right now, but it's got a very, very, very busy 2018 to look forward to. So I'll say thanks for watching, and yeah, as always, appreciate you guys tuning in. Have a good evening, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Adios.